Welcome to the reading of the Sabbath School lesson for the second quarter of 2022. Welcome to Lesson 13 from the series on Genesis. It's titled Israel in Egypt, ready for teaching on June 25, and I'm Percy Harrold. Monday, June 20. Jacob settles in Egypt. It's very interesting how, despite all that Jacob has been told about Joseph's being alive in Egypt, the Lord still gave him visions in the night, as we read in verse 2 of chapter 46 yesterday, and in them commanded him to leave. Jacob leaves the land of promise for, of all places, Egypt, which later becomes associated with the one place that God's people do not want to go, as we read in Deuteronomy 17:16. But he shall not multiply horses for himself, nor cause the people to return to Egypt to multiply horses. For the Lord has said to you, you shall not return that way again. Read Genesis chapter 47. What spiritual truths and principles can we find in this account? Genesis 47, beginning at verse 1. Then Joseph went and told Pharaoh and said, My father and my brothers, their flocks and their herds and all that they possess have come from the land of Canaan, and indeed they are in the land of Goshen. And he took 5 men from among his brothers and presented them to Pharaoh. Then Pharaoh said to his brothers, What is your occupation? And they said to Pharaoh, Your servants are shepherds, both we and also our fathers. And they said to Pharaoh, We have come to dwell in the land, because your servants have no pasture for their flocks. For the famine is severe in the land of Canaan. Now therefore, please let your servants dwell in the land of Goshen. When Pharaoh spoke to Joseph, saying, Your father and your brothers have come to you, the land of Egypt is before you, have your father and brothers dwell in the best of the land, let them dwell in the land of Goshen, and if you know any competent men among them, then make them chief herdsmen over my livestock. Then Joseph brought in his father Jacob and set him before Pharaoh, and Jacob blessed Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Jacob, How old are you? And Jacob said to Pharaoh, The days of the years of my pilgrimage are 130 years. Few and evil have been the days of the years of my life, and they have not attained to the days of the years of the life of my fathers in the days of their pilgrimage. So Jacob blessed Pharaoh, and he went out from before Pharaoh. And Joseph situated his father and his brothers, and gave them a possession in the land of Egypt, in the best of the land, in the land of Ramses, as Pharaoh had commanded. Then Joseph provided his father, his brothers, and all his father's household with bread, according to the number of their families. Now there was no bread in all the land, for the famine was very severe, so that the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan languished because of the famine. And Joseph gathered up all the money that was found in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan for the grain which they bought, and Joseph brought the money into Pharaoh's house. So when the money failed, in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan, all the Egyptians came to Joseph and said, Give us bread, for why should we die in your presence, for the money has failed? Then Joseph said, Give your livestock, and I will give you bread for your livestock, if the money is gone. So they brought their livestock to Joseph, and Joseph gave them bread in exchange for the horses, the flocks, the cattle of the herds, and for the donkeys. Thus he fed them with bread in exchange for all their livestock that year. And when the year had ended, they came to him the next year and said to him, We will not hide from my lord that our money is gone. My lord also has our herds and livestock. There is nothing left in the sight of my lord but our bodies and our lands. Why should we die before your eyes, both we and our land? Buy us and our land for bread, and we and our land will be servants of Pharaoh. Give us seed, that we may live and not die, that the land may not be desolate. Then Joseph brought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh, for every man of the Egyptians sold his field, because the famine was severe upon them. So the land became Pharaoh's, and as for the people, he moved them into the cities, from one end of the borders of Egypt to the other end. Also the land of the priests he did not buy, for the priests had rations allotted to them by Pharaoh, and they ate their rations which Pharaoh gave them. Therefore they did not sell their lands. Then Joseph said to the people, Indeed, I have bought you and your land this day for Pharaoh. Look, here is seed for you, and you shall sow the land. And it shall come to pass in the harvest that you shall give 1/5 to Pharaoh. 4/5 shall be your own, as seed for the field and for your food, for those of your households, and as food for your little ones. So they said, You have saved our lives. Let us find favour in the sight of the Lord, and we will be Pharaoh's servants. And Joseph made it a law over the land of Egypt to this day, that Pharaoh should have 1/5, except for the land of the priests only, which did not become Pharaoh's. So Israel dwelt in the land of Egypt, in the country of Goshen, and they had possessions there, and grew and multiplied exceedingly. And Jacob lived in the land of Egypt 17 years. So the length of Jacob's life was 147 years. When the time drew near that Israel must die, he called his son Joseph and said to him, Now, if I have found favour in your sight, please put your hand under my thigh, and deal kindly and truly with me. Please do not bury me in Egypt, but let me lie with my fathers. You shall carry me out of Egypt, and bury me in their burial place. And he said, I will do as you have said. Then he said, Swear to me. And he swore to him. So Israel bowed himself on the head of the bed. Joseph took 5 of his brothers to present to Pharaoh and receive from him the grant of land for their future home, Ellen White writes in Patriarchs and Prophets, page 233. Gratitude to his prime minister would have led the monarch to honour them with appointments to offices of state, but Joseph, true to the worship of Jehovah, sought to save his brothers from the temptations to which they would be exposed at the heathen court. Therefore he counselled them, when questioned by the king, to tell him frankly their occupation. The sons of Jacob followed his counsel, being careful also to state that they had come to sojourn in the land, not to become permanent dwellers there, thus reserving the right to depart if they chose. The king assigned them a home, as offered in the best of the land, the country of Goshen. End of quote. Wisely, too, Pharaoh does not encourage these sojourners to become beggars, living off the largesse of their host. He inquires about their occupation in verse 3 of chapter 47. And that reads, Then Pharaoh said to his brothers, What is your occupation? And they said to Pharaoh, Your servants are shepherds, both we and also our fathers, in order that they may adjust better to their new environment. He also is eager to use their expertise, and even suggests in verse 6 that they serve him as chief herdsman over his livestock. Then, although Jacob the foreigner is the inferior, the stranger, he stands before the leader of the land, and as the text says, Jacob blessed Pharaoh in verse 7. He, the lowly stranger, is the one who blesses Pharaoh, the ruler of mighty Egypt. Why should that be? The verb Ahmed Lifney, A-M-A-D, L-I-F-N-E-Y, or set before, in Genesis 47:4, is normally used in priestly contexts, as we read in Leviticus chapter 14 and verse 11. Then the priest who makes him clean shall present the man who is to be made clean, and those things before the Lord at the door of the tabernacle of meeting. Considering that in ancient Egypt the Pharaoh had the status of the highest priest, this means that, in a spiritual sense, Jacob stands higher than the highest priest of Egypt, higher even than Pharaoh himself. And so to finish today, whatever our station in life, what should it mean to us in how we treat others that we are a royal priesthood, a holy nation, his own special people, as it says in 1 Peter 2, verse 9? What obligations does our faith put on us? This lesson was read by Dr. Percy Harrold for Christian Services for the Blind. Sponsored by the Sabbath School Department and distributed through Hope Channel Australia, this podcast is also redistributed by Hope Channel Germany, Christian Record Services for the Blind, and It Is Written. It is also available on SoundCloud and through multiple podcast distributors, including Apple iTunes. Remember, God is always faithful.